Hola, buenos días. Les habla Carles Gaju, gerente de distribución institucional. En nombre de BICE, les doy la bienvenida a nuestro webinar. Hoy nos acompaña John Patrick Lee, Product Manager de ETFs, y Nicolás Fonseca, ETF Product Analyst. Ellos estarán a cargo de la exposición de hoy, Mobile Gaming, Innovation in Action, donde expondrán acerca de la innovación de los juegos móviles y su rápido crecimiento, tanto en la tasa de crecimiento como en los ingresos totales, dentro de la industria del juego. Al final de la exposición tendremos tiempo para conversar con John Patrick y con Nicolás, por lo que pueden ir escribiendo sus preguntas en el chat y después las revisaremos. También les vamos a mostrar un código QR para que lo puedan escanear y nos ayuden a contestar una breve encuesta. Para nosotros es muy importante conocer sus opiniones y así ir mejorando nuestros webinars. Thank you, JP, for being with us today. You have our full attention. Please go ahead.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. This is the second webinar I've done with BICE, so very excited to be here and happy to be talking about video gaming and esports. My name is JP. I'm ETF Product Manager at VanEck, and I'm here, very happy to be here with my colleague Nicolás Fonseca, who works with me on this in this sector. A little bit background about VanEck. Founded in 1955. Key kind of thing to think about is, VanEck as a firm is really focused on forward-looking, intelligently designed strategies. So we're trying to identify themes that are in the market which have long-term persistence and trying to offer investment vehicles for people to access those emerging themes. So video games is a great example of this. The firm is known for gold and emerging markets. So we always try to stay, we're trying to figure out what's happening in the market that we need to be paying attention to, and then provide access to that to our clients. So we have a wide range of asset classes, emerging market bonds, gold equities, gold itself, video gaming and esports. So we are a well-rounded, capable, forward-looking firm and having a lot of fun. Without further ado, we're here to talk about video gaming and esports, and I think the key thing here to think about is that video gaming and esports is a structural, long-term growth story. And everything we talk about kind of comes back to that idea that video gaming is growing fast, or growing well, and it's supported by people from around the world. And there's a lot of exciting things happening within the video gaming industry. Mobile gaming is a very exciting, high growth area of the industry. As a group, video game companies are very forward looking and trying to figure out new ways to push product. And so they're trying new business models. And when something works, everybody copies it and tries to do the same thing. So and so we're talking about that, and then we're finally going to think about, okay, great, we love the video gaming industry. How do you invest, right? How can you think about investing in the video gaming industry? And we're going to go over, our approach to that. So without further ado, Nicolás Fonseca, take it away.
Hey, thanks, JP, and good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. So on this first slide, long story short, over the last 5 years, video game revenues and user growth have shown, as JP mentioned, a structural long-term growth trend. To put it into perspective and to say, okay, what does that mean? It means 175 billion in revenues in 2020. That was the projection. And yeah, to put it that robotics, cybersecurity is not as big as that. So 175 is a huge number. And I'll get it. Some people are going to say, okay, COVID happened in 2020. That's why video games revenues were so big. And kind of true, kind of not true, 50-50. I mean, definitely COVID played a huge part in this, because if it was not because of COVID, people would have not stayed home, right? If people don't stay home, they don't play game. And we kind of have to attribute, not in the best way, but COVID did help the video game industry. However, the video game industry has been here for a long time. We can see on the chart, 2015, there were already revenues of 100 million, close to 100 million. So this is not like it just happened in 2020. Like this has been here for a long time. First video game happened in the what, 60s, 50s, JP?
Yeah.
Something along those lines. So we're not talking something that just popped up in 2020. It's something that's been there for a long time. And then the question we get asked sometimes is, why are revenues growing at such pace, right? And JP mentioned that on the previous slides. Two key things. First one, new business models, and we'll get to it. What we'd like to call is old model versus new model, or game as a service versus game as a product, and technology. The video game industry is key in taking and embracing technology. So that's the two main things out of revenue.
Sure. So I'll add one more thing too. And you know, when we think about what does it mean to be a structural long-term growth story, there are other trends in place that are affecting the video gaming industry that are not specific to video gaming. For example, changing consumer preferences, right? So you have consumer demand is there now. People want to be online, interacting with each other, hanging out on their mobile phones, hanging out on their computers. And you see that reflected with social media, you know, how popular social media is. And you see it reflected in how many people are playing video games. And then another trend to think about is demographics. So demographics can be talked about in a few different ways. The first way is this is not being driven by 12-year-olds using their parents' money to buy these games, right? The average video gamer in the United States is between 28 and 32 years old. So these are adults spending their money, and it's not just little kids. And then the second part about the demographics, which is providing support, is the mobile gaming in the emerging markets countries like India, like China, like Southeast Asia, Brazil. You know, there's all these countries where there's so many people who are getting access to the mobile phone for the first time. And what do you do when you get your first mobile phone? You download Angry Birds, or you download another video, you know, you download some game on your phone so you figure out how to play the phone. So there's a long runway, especially in the emerging market space, for mobile growth and mobile users. And that leads us to our next slide about mobile gaming. Take it away, Nicolás.
Yeah, so as JP saying, mobile gaming is the powerhouse. Like if you look at mobile gaming, it is the largest piece of the pie. It's been growing at outstanding. Like it's been so much faster than the other two segments, which are PC and console. With that said, those two segments, PC and console, are still pretty good. If you were to go back, I mean, if you guys have kids, going back in December and trying to find a PS5, it was almost impossible. I know friends that they couldn't get it. I mean, if you're trying to buy a Nintendo Switch when they come out, not easy. But those consoles and PCs have been, I mean, they've been forever here. The mobile phones, I think the first iPhone launched, what, 07, 08?
Yeah.
So it's been about 12 years, give or take, 12, 13 years. And we went from having a phone that just actually could only take calls to the iPhone, where we can play video games all the time. So yes, iPhone launched, people started playing, and why is it growing so much? Unlike JP said, everyone who has a phone, I'm pretty sure all of us on this call have a phone right now, close to, in our desk or wherever we are right now. Sometimes we're gonna have two phones, work and life, but I'm pretty sure in both phones you guys have video, like some kind of games. I know I have Candy Crush, and every once in a while you just go in there, pop it, play it, and you spend probably $2 to $5, and we'll get to that in a second. The second key thing on mobile gaming is for video game publisher to build a video game for a mobile device, it's so much cheaper than to build an actual game for a PC or console. I mean, developing an app, yeah, it takes time, it takes R&D, but on the expense-wise, it's a lot easier and cheaper for them to do it. And the last one I would say is demographics. Again, we go back to what JP said on the previous slides. EME countries, younger people have access to smartphones. EME countries have a tendency to have younger populations than developed market countries. So nowadays, people with 10, 12, 15-year-olds have a smartphone. I remember my first smartphone. I got it probably when I was 15 or 16. and I play video games. But nowadays, I have friends that have kids, and they're already playing video games, and they are 3-4 years old, which is like crazy. They already have like a smartphone for them, just for them, so that they play video games. Last point here before we move on is M&A space. There's been a lot of companies right now merging, acquiring different companies. The key thing on those acquisitions is being mobile gaming. One recent example that comes to mind is EA. I'm pretty sure, I hope you guys know, is the one that does FIFA. Everyone wants to play soccer. I know Chile wants to play soccer. We all want to play soccer at some point. But they just bought Glue Mobile. Glue Mobile is specifically 100% designed to do mobile gaming. And with the purchase, EA said, just by buying them, of course, they had to pay $2 billion, but just by buying them, they increased their footprint by, they doubled their footprint on the mobile space. So mobile is coming, and it's like not going away. We expect that to keep going, to keep increasing in the next coming years.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. So if you think about mobile gaming as this really white hot area of growth in the video game market, companies, it's like business school 101. Like areas of high growth means there's going to be a lot of competition coming into the market. So there's really two ways you can compete. The first way is to build a game from scratch and say, we're going to create this game and we're going to launch it to the market and we're going to try to capture market share, right? So you can invest in your own game and build it. And Nicolás is very, like, these games, mobile games are much, much cheaper to build and make. So it's a lower hurdle for new competitors. So there's like no moat, right? So very easy to launch a new mobile game. So companies can either launch their own mobile game, or like EA did, they could just buy a mobile game company that's already out there doing business and doing well. And that's what's happening, is that a lot of these mobile publishers are getting bought up by bigger publishers, like EA buys Glue, or a couple years ago, Activision buys King. You know, the top tier publishers, they recognize the mobile growth, the mobile hotspot, and they say, we need to get involved here. So we're just going to start making acquisitions, and that's what's happening, right? That's what one of the main drivers of the M&A activity that's going on right now. So good overview. Yeah, it's a good overview.
All right, how do they make money? And we mentioned this earlier, there's two types of ways that video game publishers or companies make money in the space. One, game as a service, which is what we also like to call the new model, and game as a product, which is the old model. A quick overview between both of them. Game as a product is you go buy your game, you play it, and you're done. So in today's world, you would go into GameStop, since everyone's talking about GameStop nowadays. You would go into a GameStop, buy your FIFA, take it home, play it, and a year from now or 2 years from now, whenever they release the new version, you go back to GameStop if you're still in business, and then you get it, and then you do it again, right? So that's it. You pay $50, the company made $50 out of you, we're done. The new model, or the game as a service. What happens in this one is, first of all, the game is going to be cheaper. Sometimes it's going to be free. You just got to go to your platform. You can download FIFA, or you can go also buy it. It's definitely going to be cheaper than that. What happens afterwards, and I guess a good example here, in my opinion, is a Candy Crush, right? You download your phone, you get there, you start playing, and eventually you get to a level that you cannot, for whatever reason, you cannot go through. You can spend $2, they give you a booster, I think that's what it's called, and you pass the level. So you spend $2 today. Next week happens, you're playing Candy Crush again, boom, same thing. I cannot pass this level. Another $2, another $2. You're spending $2 to $5. Usually it's going to be less than 10, and you just keep going. Eventually, after all the year of paying $2 to $5 every so often, you're going to be making the company is going to be making more revenue out of you on those small transactions than on the $100 or $50 purchase you did at GameStop, right? So what does that happen? Well, one thing, revenues on the publisher side increases. And the second thing in there is that the life cycle of the game also increases, right? So Candy Crush, you pass the level, they can just build some algorithm to make it a little bit harder so that you have to pay some money, and that's it, right? If you're playing FIFA on your console, it gets to a point that you win the World Cup, you're the best of the best, and that's it. Those tweaks, those small changes, get you to. It's easier for the publisher to develop those tweaks so that they, instead of having a 1-year game, they have a 10-year game. And then NoGP has a great example with Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah, so Grand Theft, so this new business model, this idea that you're going to get people to spend money over and over and over on the same game has really been allowed to happen because of technology. Because if you go back to the GameStop example, or go back to 1993, right? The games were in a little cartridge. There was no connection to the internet. You're just plugging a cartridge in and playing a game. Now, all of your consoles or your PC is all connected to the internet. So all you have to do is click download, and it'll download the game and buy the game. Or if you want to click buy, you just click, right? It removes a lot of steps from the customer purchasing the game from the publisher. And so this idea that you can spend money with one click over and over and over, it increases the amount of money that a publisher can make from a single customer. Okay, so go back to the FIFA example. I'm not going to buy, if FIFA 2015 comes out, I'm only going to buy that one time, right? I'm going to buy FIFA 2015, and I'm not going to buy it again until it comes out next year, or if I lose it or something like that. Under the new model, you could keep spending money on a single game for years. Okay, Grand Theft Auto 5 came out in 2013. It's an 8-year-old game. Okay, that game is still one of the top money makers for Take-Two, who is the publisher. So that kind of the idea that you could have a game be 8 years old and still be like the top money maker is why this is so important, because it really changes what the publisher, how they think about their lineup. Like, why would Take-Two release the Grand Theft Auto 6 when they've got this cash cow, Grand Theft Auto 5, just pumping money for them, right? So, and I guess the final thing I'd like to highlight about this is that it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. Like, it's the idea that you can do this recurring consumer spending. You can use your lineup in different ways. And here's what I mean. So on the slide, Call of Duty Warzone is a free Warzone game. So Activision released this free game. It's awesome. You join in, you got, it's a really fun game. And then their traditional game is called either Modern Warfare or Cold War. So they get you into the free game. They get you spending money on the battle pass and your weapons and stuff like that. And then they'll upsell you to the game as a product. So you get in for free. Oh, wow, this is really fun. But hey, if you really want to level up, you got to buy the full game, and that's $60. And that's what people did last year. It was like the best year for Call of Duty ever. And it was because they had this free game that so many new players were entering the Call of Duty experience, loving the game, upselling. Now, look, Take-Two Interactive on the bottom does it completely different. So Grand Theft Auto 5, they have a version that's online called GTA Online, and that's where you're getting that recurring consumer spending. You still have to buy Grand Theft Auto 5 to be able to play it online. NBA 2K, same thing. If you want to play the NBA 2K20, my team, where that's where they're spending this recurring consumer spending over and over, you still have to buy the game first. So they're making you buy the game as a product, and then you go and you're allowed to buy recurring consumer spending, game as a service. Activision does it completely different. You come in for free, and then you start paying money. So it's just to illustrate that this is not a one-size-fits-all thing. And then I guess one more thing is that mobile gaming is a big part of why this is a thing. So Candy Crush example is great because mobile games, by and large, you download for free, and then you'll start paying money, and then the publisher's like, well, why don't we use this business model on, a traditional game? Okay, Nicholas.
One thing before you move back, one thing we didn't mention is the subscription model, which is, and I think we all know about it, is the Netflix model, right? You pay $10 in Netflix, I think it's $10, $12 today. You sign up, and I can tell you, Netflix, I had it for like 5 years, and I probably paid them a lot of money. But the thing is, those transactions are so minimal, right? $10 here and there is not that big of a deal. You forget about it. And that's what also some video games are trying to do. They release some new content, but they tell you, hey, just pay us $5 every month. You'll get the new version of the game. And that's it. And then you forget about it. You just assume it's like going to Netflix, I think. Like you sit on your couch, you turn on your TV, you say, okay, I'm going to put Netflix. I don't remember the last time I said like, oh yeah, I paid for Netflix today or last night or like 2 weeks ago. You just take it for granted. And I think that's what they wanted to do. And that's why we also see Netflix making millions and millions and other companies trying to get into the Netflix business model.
Yeah. Yeah, and like Microsoft's doing that, and so they're doing that with their Game Pass, right? Like it's a subscription. If you have an Xbox and you want to play Microsoft's online library, it's $15 a month, and you know, I've got it. You put my credit card on my Xbox, and it's a recurring subscription. It's like that just it pulls out every month, just like my Netflix does. So the subscription model is definitely coming to not only the platforms, but I think some games are even trying to get into that. Like, so if you want, there's like a Fortnite subscription. So if you want your Fortnite, or maybe it hasn't launched yet, but they announced. But anyway,
yeah, working on it. Yeah.
Yeah, subscription model is key here. All right. So, what's going on this year, Nicholas? What are we looking at this year?
This year, and I think going at least I would say the outlook for this year and for the next 2 to 3 maybe, mobile gaming, as we've mentioned, is gonna continue to dominate. Like we've mentioned before, companies, big publishers, EA, Zynga, others, are investing into the mobile space. What's going to happen eventually, we're all going to probably be gamers or be considered gamers for some of these companies because we all have a smartphone. I mean, let's be honest, everyone has one. Now we're all going to be playing. Yeah, some people may pay a lot more than others, but as long as you pay $2 every so often, you can be considered some type of gamer for these publishers. Again, demographics, what JP said, EME countries, China, Indonesia, Brazil, are contributing to that growth because of their younger population. Younger populations, they get smartphones at earlier stages, boom, they're already in. Second of all, what we like to call the secondary websites or secondary gaming-related services. We have 2 examples here, Twitch, which is Amazon live streaming website, and we have Discord, which is similar, but it's messaging social. What do these websites do? And just to put into perspective, you go into Twitch, you broadcast, you turn your camera on, you start broadcasting yourself playing some video games, right? What's going to happen? People are going to go, you're going to start watching, and you're going to say, you know what? I want to play what this guy's playing, right? So you're going to go, boom, buy the game, do the free model, whatnot. Same thing with Discord. You go there, you start typing something, someone comes up and say, oh yeah, I'm playing X game, this is the way you can pass level 15. So you're like, oh, I already have the key to level 15. Boom, you have to start playing the game. The important word in this second bullet point is engagement. People are getting engaged. People want to feel part of a community.
And I'll just, this is not a bullet here, I just wanted to add one thing, Nicholas, is that in a lot of ways, video games are becoming social media platforms. Okay, so social media is super popular. Like I said, going back to the first point, consumer demand for things like social media is there. Okay, so video games are moving towards becoming social media platforms. It's a place for you to hang out, right? You want to go online, hang out, post pictures on Facebook, or do you want to go online and play a game with your friends and talk to them on the phone, talk to them on the chat and have a good time? And so that is what's really important, is that people want that. So they want to be a part of a group, and my group's hanging out playing Fortnite, or my group's hanging out playing Call of Duty. I'm going to play Call of Duty tonight to hang out with my buddies. Social media is key. Go ahead. Sorry, Nicholas. Go ahead.
No, all good. Great thing though. Number 3, or a third bullet point is continue M&A activity. What we said earlier, big companies are acquiring the smaller guys. We have a couple of examples. I think Microsoft acquired ZeniMax Studios for $7 billion a couple of months ago. What were the key themes? Cloud and console. And M&A and cloud gaming go hand in hand a lot of times, as JP mentioned. What is Microsoft trying to do? Microsoft, you have the Xbox, they want to put all the games into the cloud so that eventually you just have to log into the internet somehow. Mobile, laptop, whatever. and you can just go in and start playing video games where you just left off a couple days ago, a couple hours ago. In other words, Zynga, we mentioned it too. Big mobile game, and they acquire another Peak Games. Again, I think it was 1.802 billion. What was the key theme? Mobile gaming. And the last one we mentioned already, Electronic Arts. They bought Blue. Again, the key theme is mobile. So those M&A are just a couple of examples, but it's happening at a larger stage. One of the companies that grows exponentially by acquiring other companies is Embracer. If you look at them, what they do is they're a big company, but they go to these really small studios that they have some expertise on X or YZ game or platform or technology, and they just buy it. Really small company, just up and running, but they buy it, they build some synergies, and boom, Embracer comes out with a new video game, and they're covering all the three mobile, console, and PC platforms. And then the last one, as I said, cloud gaming. Maybe not this year, maybe not the next one. Cloud gaming is maybe looking 3 to 5 years, maybe even 10 years down the road. What's going to happen? Everything right now is going on the cloud, especially what happened last year. You have to be able to access all your information, video games or not, from somewhere. So eventually what's going to happen is you're on a trip, you're working, whatever, you can just log in to the cloud, go there, and start playing video games. That requires a little bit more of technology because some games are just for PCs, some games are just for mobile phones. Eventually, with the cloud gaming, all the games have to be available everywhere, no matter what. So that requires a little bit more of tech. But we believe that we're going to get there. Right, JP?
Yeah. So cloud gaming is when instead of having to buy the PC or buy your console, all that's being done by Google or Amazon or whoever's the cloud gaming provider, and then all your games are in the cloud, and then you don't need that PC or console. So for a person like me who has an Xbox, but it's getting old, if cloud gaming was here, I would not buy an Xbox. I would just keep my Microsoft Game Pass subscription with the cloud service and play on the internet, right? So going back to the M&A, so Microsoft bought this studio called ZeniMax, and they have all these awesome games like Fallout, Skyrim. There's all these awesome games there, right? So the thinking is 5 years from now, when Microsoft releases the next Fallout, they might say, hey guys, it's only coming out on Xbox. So if you have a PlayStation or a PC, like you don't get it. Yeah. So that idea of exclusivity is really, I think, a glimpse into the future, because Microsoft is trying to set up their cloud gaming service to be the best. So their purchase of this studio that has all these awesome games, it really is a huge power move by Microsoft to say, hey, and they haven't announced it, right? Like they're like, wink, wink, yeah, it's coming out maybe, wink, wink, like that's kind of the vibe that it is. So it's kind of like M&A is there, positioning for the cloud, and I think that's like a 5-year story, if not 10-year, because the technology isn't really there. It's very technologically intensive to do cloud gaming and have that kind of thing. So anyway, long story short, it's coming. It's not here yet. M&A activity is going to be there. It's exciting. Go ahead, Nico.
All right.
What's the risk? What's the risk?
The risks. We highlighted 5 risks, right, that we see coming up, or we see. I mean, we've seen in the last few months. We think it's going to happen in the next couple of months as well. Single game risk, like everywhere in any investments, you have to diversify. There's a great example on this not long ago, Cyberpunk 2077. The publisher was CD Projekt Red. They've been announcing this game for a couple of years. It was supposed to be a hit. Long story short, they published the game and it was a disaster. It was terrible. If you look at their stock price when they announced the game and everyone went online and said this is terrible, stock dropped like 20% or so. Not good. So if more companies are doing what they do, what at least CD Projekt does, we're gonna see some issues there. Right now, I think that's the only company that's specifically towards one single game, but we could see more of those happening. Regulatory risk, I think it speaks for itself. Just there's different regulations around the world. Valuation risk, that's one to highlight right now. Some of the video game stocks, I mean, they had a great year, right? I mean, they were up 80, 100% last year. And over the last year, there's been 150% last year. That's great. But we cannot, I mean, I don't think any company can grow up 150% every year. We got to be honest there. There's some valuation risks. I mean, some of them are a little extended. I mean, these are those companies, and they did great. I think we believe they're still going to be doing great. But some of them have gone a little bit, let's say, extended beyond what they're supposed to, what their business model is. So there's that risk. Competitive risk, like I said, like barriers to entry, they're relatively low into the mobile space. We could say everyone can build an app and put a game. That's true. You just have to be, of course, careful what exactly your games are going to be like. But the key one here that we see, and I think we've seen it in the last month or so, JP, is the return to normalcy risk. What is that? We all want to go out. Hopefully everyone's getting a vaccine sooner than later. I don't know when we're getting it. I signed up for a notification yesterday here in the US where they said there was 1.5 million people in front of me. So whenever I get it, of course, we all want to go out. We all want to go back to sporting events. I don't know if someone's been seeing what happened in Australia not long ago with the Australian Open in tennis. It was great to see that the first couple of days. But everyone wants to do that. You want to go back to a concert. You want to go back to a restaurant. You kind of want to have to not worry about the virus. What's going to happen when everyone gets a vaccine and goes back to, say, their normal life? If there's anywhere back to normal again, well, people are not going to be staying home. People are going to go out. They're not going to be playing a lot of video games, which is completely true. But like we said before, video games they didn't just happen because COVID happened. They've been here for a long time. I mean, first video game in the 60s, 70s. So they've been here. They're going to be here afterwards. And something I want to highlight here, yeah, we get this risk, but at the same time, people have built new routines. They built new habits in the last year or so. And instead of playing, say, your soccer game at 10 o'clock with your buddies on a Saturday morning, that moved probably to playing FIFA at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock at night on a Tuesday night, something you didn't do before. So yeah, maybe now people are going to have to decide, you know what, I'm going to go to the soccer game on Saturday. Some other people say, I cannot make the soccer game on Saturday. I'm going to play video games on Tuesday night because that's what my work-life balance is. So we get it. People are going to go out. But at the same time, there's some new habits that we're not just going to drop off and say, okay, I'm done. No more video games for me ever again. That's not going to happen. We see some risks there. And especially the last weeks, you've seen it on the stock market.
Yeah, you've seen that. I think you've seen the video games are growth stocks. Yeah. Growth stocks, by and large, have expensive valuations and high growth levels. The prices are driven by expectations of future growth. When things go back to normal, there will be downward revisions to some of these video games outlooks, and that will hurt the stock price. Over the last couple of weeks, high growth names, high valuation names have gotten hit hard, right? Yeah. Is there a big rotation underway? I don't know. I think it's hard to, it's hard to talk about it like that. But the long term, so when things open up, there's going to be a hit, but the long term trends are in place. Video games are part of people's lives, and that is not going anywhere. Okay, so we have spent the last 35 minutes talking about how awesome the video gaming market is and all these cool things that are happening in the video game market. So then you think about how to invest, right? So the NBIS Global Video Gaming and Esports Index is an index, right? So we have a couple of ETFs out there. We have a US ETF and a UCITS ETF, but all of the ETFs that we have for the video game space are passive. So we're not making active decisions. The index is the index. It's a rules-based index, and the ETF is tracking the index, so it's not active. So the key feature of the index is that companies have to have over 50% of their revenues from video gaming or esports to be eligible for the index. That means right off the bat that you exclude a bunch of companies that make a lot of money from video games. companies like Microsoft, Sony, Amazon, Facebook, Google. All these companies are maybe related, but as an overall percentage of the revenues, very small. So then what companies are included? We're talking about the big publishers, a few of the hardware companies like NVIDIA and AMD, which are heavily invested in the video game space. So really what we're doing is we're saying, number one, what's pure, over 50%. And then from there, we're saying we're going to cover the top 90% of the market. So we're trying to cover the largest, most liquid companies out there. And so when you come into the opportunity set, you apply these rules, you get a certain kind of exposure, right? And that exposure is targeted, and it is, again, a high growth basket. And it doesn't do what the market does. Because the market is composed, like the S&P 500 or the US, the MSCI ACWI. If you compare the ESPO holdings with the S&P holdings, very, very low overlap, like less than 2%. ACWI is just over 2%. So you're not getting this exposure through broad market benchmarks, because this is a super targeted portfolio. And you see here on the left, correlations are lower than you might expect. 0.68 for the ACWI. That's to me indicating that this is a alpha generator and a diversifier. And you see the alpha on the right hand chart with the index outperforming the broad market index. And then you see the not differentiator, forgot the word. Anyway, so do you know the word? It starts with the D, and I'm blanking out here. Yeah. Diversifier. It's a diversifier, right? So it's a portfolio diversifier. It doesn't do necessarily what the rest of the market's doing, and that's kind of like what you want in a portfolio. You don't want everything doing the same thing. You want somebody to move left when the market moves right, and that's what video games have done. So the key summary here for me is, we have these rules, you apply them to the opportunity set, it creates a portfolio, and the portfolio's characteristics have the potential to generate alpha, and can diversify your portfolio. So in my opinion, this is a growth strategy. And so if you're trying to figure out where this fits, it fits in a global growth bucket, right? If you look at the characteristics of this portfolio compared to the S&P 500 growth or the MSCI ACWI growth, very similar characteristics, high PEs, high growth levels. So this is a growth strategy and should be treated as such, in my opinion. So we have an ETF in the US, the VanEck Vectors Video Gaming and Esports ETF. Ticker is ESPO. Here's a couple of the characteristics. Performance has been very, very good since inception. Again, like Nicolás said, this year we've had a little bit of a growth blowout over the last couple of weeks, but I think that's a healthy thing, and you don't want something to go up 85% every year. You need a healthy correction. So that's good to see. A little bit of a valuation reset, and I'm definitely excited to see what the future holds for the video gaming industry. And I think from my perspective, that's pretty much it. So Nicolás, thank you very much for walking through all that stuff. I think you did a great job, and always a pleasure. So
thank you, and I think also thanks BICE for hosting us today.
So we can open it up for questions. I am full screen, so I do not have any questions in front of me. If somebody wants to read out some questions, we can do our best to answer them.
Sure. Thank you, JP and Nicolás. It was a very interesting your presentation today, this morning, and thank you for all the audience to be with us during this morning. We have many questions here, so hopefully we will get all of them during the next part of the time we have. And one of the first question is regarding the IPOs, relating when do the new IPOs come to the index, please? If you can elaborate on that. Thank you.
So that's a good question. We get that question a lot. So the IPOs, they come in when the index provider, so the index provider has rules for the IPOs. So a good example would be Roblox. They just IPO'd yesterday, right? So everybody's sending me an email saying, when does Roblox come into the index? So couple of things. Number one, VanEck or me or, the VanEck squad is not saying this IPO is going to come in, this IPO is not going to come in, right? It's a rules-based system. And the index provider is the one who decides when IPOs come in. If something is big and something is liquid, it, generally speaking, will come into the index faster at the next rebalance. So the ETF and the index is rebalancing this month, at the end of the month. IPO for Roblox happened yesterday. I would anticipate the Roblox would come in at the next rebalance in June. And that's what we saw for Unity back in September. So Unity IPO'd in September, the week of the ETF rebalance, and it's a big company and it's liquid. So it came in the December rebalance. So I think that's a good framework to think about. How big is the company? If it's big and liquid, it'll come in sooner than later at the next rebalance. But having said that, I'm not the one making that decision. That's up to the index provider.
Good, thanks. That's very clear. And you mentioned in some part that there's this business model where you have to free premium business model.
Yeah.
Are too many free to play games that create too much competition? There's so many games there where maybe try to get the attention from one consumer is getting harder. So what's your thoughts on that regards?
I think that that's just it's just the state of the market. People are trying. The name of the game for video game companies is to get a new user. If they want to get as many users as they can playing their game, and then once they get that user, they can figure out a way to monetize them, right? So the fact that there's so many of these awesome free games is just a reflection of what's going on in the market. That this is a new business model. I'm trying to get people to play my game. I want to launch my game and try to get somebody in. Is it bad for the video game market? I don't think it's bad at all. I think that these companies are trying to get more people playing their games, so they're doing everything they can to, get people in the door. Is it a race to the bottom? I don't think so. I think that once you're playing a game, they're going to figure out a way how to monetize it, whether that's selling ads, whether that's you paying $1 or $2 every now and again. The name of the game is getting people in the door, and free to play is just like this shiny new object, and that's why it's exciting. You got anything on that, Nicholas?
Yeah, I would say that free to play, it's those like trials you go for some products, like you get the first month or the first 3 months is free, and eventually you're gonna get either you forget you had it and you're gonna pay it, or if you don't forget, you say, you know what, I love the product, I'm gonna keep doing it. But the thing is, something similar on this free to game play is there's no trial, but eventually you get in there, you start playing it, and the publisher knows who's playing it all the time. I mean, they have algorithms behind it saying this guy logs in every time at whatever to play it. Eventually, like JP said, they're going to say, okay, we cannot just run for free because that's not a business model, right? They're going to find a way, and they're going to say, okay, you know what? Now we're launching this premium version, which is going to be $5. But you're already engaged, you're already in it, playing it so much, so you're going to say, you know what? $5 is not that much. I'm in. Boom, you bought it. And that's going to happen everywhere. What might happen at the end is there might be a lot of games or a lot of studios that build something great. They couldn't monetize it that much. And then you got this big company, Microsoft, you got Zynga, you got EA or someone else coming and saying, you know what, your game is great, but if you partner with me or if I buy you, we can create a synergy. And now that we have a synergy and now that we have a name behind it, we can monetize it. EA buys a small studio that had let's say a random game, not that really good game, not monetizing. Now you have the EA brand behind it. People are gonna start buying it, right? Just because you have that brand. You have Activision, same thing. They buy something, they put the Activision behind it, boom, grows huge. Same thing with it. You can have thousands of examples like that in which that M&A activity on those free-to-play games might eventually be the monetized, how the game is monetized.
I think the big publishers too, they have like that institutional infrastructure to, because if you think about there's the development studio. Those are the guys who are like writing the code and creating the game. And then your publisher is really a distributor, right? So the developer makes the game, it's this awesome game, and then the publisher distributes it. So what does distribution mean? It really is like it's marketing and sales, right? So a company like EA has a much bigger distribution network, much bigger marketing capability, much bigger marketing budget. So they might be able to take an awesome game that's very popular among this community and then market it and distribute it to an even bigger community and an even bigger audience. So that is kind of what a company like EA brings to the EA Glue Mobile deal. Not just, oh, it's an EA game, I'm going to play it, but more like EA is going to be investing in the future of those games by marketing it and publishing it at a bigger scale than that company would have done if it hadn't get bought out. So good answer, Nico.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, guys. Another question regarding the, I will read it because it's very long. Regarding the mobile gaming industry and regarding the opportunity for investors, where do you think there are more opportunities for investors and brands? Teams, tournaments, hardware, software. What if you can explain that type of opportunity among all these different segments or part of the supply chain, please?
Okay, so this question to me sounds like you're asking about teams and tournaments and stuff. You're asking about esports.
Yep.
And here's esports. The video gaming industry is $175 billion a year industry, 175B. The esports industry is a $1 billion a year industry. That's one. So it's a 1 to 175, right? So esports is a very small subsegment of the broader video gaming industry. And the way it's set up right now is that the video game publisher who owns the game, now they've launched their own league. So the video game publisher owns the game, they own the league, they're taking a cut of teams' profits. And so from my perspective, really, if you're trying to figure out what's going on with the esports ecosystem and you want to get involved in the esports ecosystem, just realize it's much smaller. And the way it's set up is the majority of the revenues, the majority of the action and excitement is flowing directly to the publisher who owns the game, because they own the league and they're taking money out of every single thing every dollar that's sloshing around in there. So there are some exciting esports tournaments and esports organizations out there, but in the last few years, so like if the esports thing really blew up, like I'd say 2 or 3 years ago, and the team valuations were really high, and there was all this talk of esports is the next football, and esports is the next big thing, and all these teams are getting involved, and it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar industry. So what we've seen over the last 2 years is that it's very hard for an esports team to consistently make money by winning tournaments and for esports tournaments. And the reason for that is it's very hard to win, and there's a lot of competition, and there's no physical barrier to entry. So if you've got 1 million people in a field, and how many of them can slam dunk a basketball, or how many of them can shoot a soccer goal from across the field? Few people have the physical attributes to do that. Video gaming, you can sit here, I could sit here and play video games all day for 10 hours a day, and I would become a good video gamer very quickly. So there's so many people trying to become professionals that it's just like a high turnover, it's very competitive, and it's hard to stay on top because it's so competitive. So what's happened is the companies couldn't make a lot of money doing winning the tournament, and the primary way that these esports organizations make money is through sponsorships. So let's say I have an esports team and I win a tournament, then Nike will come and say, okay, we'll sponsor you. Here's $1 million check. Every game you play, you have to wear a Nike jersey or whatever it is, right? So that's how they make the majority of their money. But it's so hard to win consistently that esports teams and organizations have pivoted from tournaments to more like lifestyle and streaming and entertainment. So it's about buying clothes, it's about being cool, it's less about winning this tournament, right? So keep esports in perspective with the broader video gaming industry. Understand it's a very intense competitive industry, and that a lot of the teams have shifted from being tournament only to more lifestyle brand entertainment organizations.
Got it. Thanks, guys. Another question is about how is the development of the VR gaming, and if the industry is investing in this type of games, and second question regarding the first one is, are the VR games going to replace the consoles or mobile games? What is your perspective on that?
Okay, so my perspective is, if you've tried to put on a VR headset for more than any kind of extended period of time, you're gonna get sick at your stomach. If you put on the thing, you go like this, and you're like this, you know, and you're in another world, your inner ear gets sick at its stomach because your brain and your eyes think that you're moving, but you're not, right? So there are some physical limitations to the VR experience. Having said that, I think a lot of people are interested in VR, but it's a very, very specific segment of the video gaming ecosystem. Only your hardcore gamers are really into VR. You got anything on that, Nicholas? You want to talk about it?
No, I mean, I was about to say the same thing. Like, VR it's hard because, like you mentioned, your mind is doing something while your body is actually not doing it. So you put that headset on, or whatever you want to call it, and you can play video games on a PC console for a couple hours.
12 hours.
You can be on there forever. Like, but imagine trying to play some kind of a game with that on your head, with your eyes doing everything, but your body is sitting on a couch. Well, your body is eventually going to move to try to simulate the world your head, like your brain's thinking, but you're not actually doing it. With that said, VR is great for a couple minutes because I've tried it and it's amazing because you're like, wow, this is crazy. To replace a PC, a mobile phone, or a console, I think, in my opinion, it's going to be hard. I think the VR is more going to be maybe some kind of an esport tournament or maybe some kind of a community just on VR, and they might be great. And there's a great examples of some companies that actually just sell those equipment, they just sell hardware, that they do great, right?
Yeah.
But it's just going to be that one or two or maybe 5 companies that are, like they say, let's call them the one-offs, which are great. I generally don't believe they're going to be as big as the other 3 segments we've talked about today, just because it's not easy to be on it's not easy to play those games. Like, you cannot be on those. You cannot monetize something that you're only going to be playing for, let's give it a long time, an hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. That's great. Thanks, guys. I will change a little bit subject. I think we have a couple of minutes to go. And regarding the risk, you mentioned some of them, but I will take it down the trade war between China and the US, and what is the risk for the publishers. So tell a little bit, what are your thoughts on those subjects?
So regulatory risk is a big one for the video gaming industry, especially for companies who are trying to sell in another country, right? So if I'm a US company and I want to sell to China consumers, it's very hard to do that. China is very hard to break into. Every single game that's released in China has to be approved by the government. Okay, so it's not just like I'm JP, I'm going to launch a video game company and go start selling games in China. It's very hard to sell games in China. And generally speaking, the video game market is very localized. And that means there's Chinese consumers play games specific to China, right? They play their own set of games. US consumers play their games. European consumers play their games. So every video game market around the world is kind of localized. And so for China, so like the idea that the trade war, that China and the US are going to be in a big fight and you're not going to be able to sell video games in China, that's really not going to affect that many games, because not that many companies that are non-Chinese are selling games in China. Having said that, other areas of the market may be affected, like the semiconductor market. So there's semiconductor companies in the index, and this trade wars would definitely have some kind of an effect in the semiconductor industry, because there's a supply chain that goes back and forth, from the U.S. to China, where U.S. mines rare metals, they send it to or the China mines rare metals, they send it to the US, we do something to a component, we send it back to China, they do something and create a semiconductor, right? So there's this back and forth. And if the trade war, starts going back and, comes back or whatever, the semiconductors and other hardware manufacturers could be hit. And I think, when the trade war thing was going on, Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft,
they had issues. Yeah,
they wrote this big letter to the U.S. Trade Commission. It was like, please don't have a trade war because it's gonna not be fun for us. So sure. For the games, not really gonna have effect. For hardware, for components, stuff like that, there's definitely some risks there.
Yeah. And just to add there one really quick thing, like we've seen it slightly. I know we have there's on the index, there's 2 semiconductor companies, but if you guys have been following lately the news in the semiconductor space, there's been a chip shortage, right? And it's kind of not towards specifically the trade war between China. It's more about materials, supply chain, COVID and whatnot, but it's also been affecting some of video games. It's also been, of course, video games just use a tiny percentage of semiconductors compared to other industries like automakers, which in the US they've been hurting. They've cut some production, some plants and whatnot. But just big picture, there's some risk there, but more like JP mentioned on those specific companies like the semiconductors that are actively on the gaming space.
Great, thanks, Nicolás. I would like to have this last couple of minutes before to go discussing and talking about how this investment opportunity is available for Chilean investors. Part of this webinar is try to present that this ETF is now can be traded in the Chilean local market. So I have a question for Carles Gajo, that if you can explain, Carles, si puedes explicarnos cómo pueden nuestros clientes acceder a este producto, este ETF, dado todas las facilidades que tienen hoy día con el acceso por bolsa local. ¿Estás en mute? Eso, excelente. Muchas gracias, Carles.
Muchas gracias, José Antonio. Efectivamente, se acaba de registrar este ETF en la Bolsa de Santiago, por lo que puede comprarse exactamente igual como uno transa una acción. Por lo tanto, la manera de adquirirlo es contactando al ejecutivo de inversiones que se tenga en BICE y se puede comprar. La transacción es en dólares y la liquidez es la misma que hay en los mercados extranjeros. Así que muy fácil de hacer. También está disponible, dado que está la Bolsa de Comercio, para inversiones en APB. Así que es una nueva manera de poder invertir en este tipo de, y fácil de poder invertir en este tipo de industria. Gracias.
Thank you, Carles. And guys, we are reached the time we have scheduled for the audience. First of all, JP, Nicolás, thank you very much for your presentation this morning. It was quite interesting. We have been with these meetings many times. Every time I enjoy the more. So every time I learn a little bit more on this, and it's quite interesting. Hopefully you will gain and perform as well as the last year was great for the ETF. Hopefully we will see these figures in the future, and for the
past performance does not guarantee
sure. Yeah, I agree with you. Take the point. But anyway, thank you very much, guys, for sharing with us, and from all the audience. Para nuestros clientes, muchas gracias por habernos acompañado esta mañana. Esperamos que hayan disfrutado de esta presentación, de este producto que es nuevo, novedoso, que hay que entenderlo, pero genera, como ustedes vieron en la presentación, ciertos elementos distintos a los otros instrumentos. Hoy día, como comentaba Carles, disponible por bolsa local, además de que también lo está por Pershing para aquellos inversionistas que invierten de afuera. Hay muchas oportunidades, así que por parte de BICE, agradecerle su compañía. Estamos siempre a su disposición. Cualquier duda, por favor, contacten a sus ejecutivos, al área de distribución, como ustedes más les acomode. Así que muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Esperamos verlos pronto nuevamente en otro webinar BICE. Thank you, VanEck team, guys. Thank you very much for being with us. See you soon. Muchas gracias. Hasta luego.
Gracias.